Yeah?
Teddy Roosevelt had lunch in Pittsburgh on July the 4th.
At the Frick Mansion, Teddy Roosevelt had lunch on the 4th of July.
What year?
1902.
Oh, I have a question.
Wait. On the 4th of July, we'll add in a vice president. It's a little harder. Vice president died on the 4th of July. Anyone? Not Adams or Jefferson. Hannibal Hamlin in the 1890s. Who? Who was Hannibal Hamlin? Lincoln's first vice president. Lincoln dropped him from the ticket. The president and vice president, we now elect them as a pair, but we don't have to keep them as a pair. Just because the president's running for re-election, he doesn't have to keep the vice president with him. They tend to do that these days because of political reasons, but it wasn't always the case. And in 1864, Lincoln was nothing if not a political animal, and he said, geez, I'm going to lose this election. Hannibal Hamlin's not adding anything to the ticket. But Andy Johnson, he's a Southerner. He's a Democrat. If I put him on the ticket with me, I'm going to get all the votes. And so he ditched Hannibal Hamlin. And in the summer of 1864, while Hamlin was still vice president, he got notice from the National Guard in Maine that his number had been picked. Vice President Hannibal Hamlin served as a private in the Maine Coast Guard for 2 months in the summer of 1864. Didn't see any fighting. He was mostly a cook at the time. But vice president who served in the Coast Guard while he was in office.
Vice president with useful work.
Vice president with useful work. It's entirely possible. Yeah.
I had a question. I think Theodore Roosevelt was a teetotaler. He didn't like alcohol in the White House or anything. Were there any other presidents?
I don't think so.
Were there any presidents who were teetotalers? Well, there were some. Some didn't make a big deal out of it. Some did. It was, my brain is frozen out.
Was it
Monroe.
Lucy Hayes.
Rutherford
Hayes and Lucy. Lucy was actually known for making sure the White House was dry. She was his first lady. Some of them were. Some of them the job drove to drink. Bess Truman may have been, but Harry did enjoy a cocktail now and again. So it wasn't a big deal. Well, George W. Bush is an alcoholic, so
doesn't drink it. But teetotaler was an alcoholic,
but does not drink.
A non-practical.
Non-practicing.
Recovering, I believe, is the term, right?
Yeah.
Wait, and then you talk about Truman. Not only didn't have the Secret Service, I don't think he had a pension either.
He did not. That was the other problem. Harry Truman retired from the presidency, and the presidents didn't have a pension at that point. In fact, the only pension Harry Truman had was from serving in the military in World War I. Very small pension. I think it amounted to $120 or $150 a month. And he actually lobbied Congress a couple of times for a presidential pension, and the Congress kept turning him down. And it wasn't until, late in the 1950s, very late in the 1950s, that Congress came around and said, yeah, okay, we'll give the ex-presidents a pension. And Herbert Hoover didn't say a word about it, because Hoover was fantastically wealthy in his career before politics. He was a mining engineer. But by this time, Hoover and Truman had become friends, so Hoover said he would take the pension only to make sure that Harry didn't look like he was poor and looking for handouts by himself. So it was nice of him. Now the presidential pension includes Secret Service protection, office expenses, actual income, money. And as of the last presidency, or was it under Clinton? They've changed some of that. And now Secret Service protection for former presidents will last only 10 years. So George W. Bush will be the first of the new generation of former presidents to cease having Secret Service protection.
What about the first ladies? When the president dies, if the president dies within those 10 years, will the first lady still have Secret Service?
I believe the Secret Service protection is for the first family for the 10 years. I think so. I do know that first ladies get pensions, and it wasn't, again, until the presidential pension was passed for Harry Truman. Before that, there were many first ladies who outlived their president husbands, and several times Congress passed special resolutions to give one individual widowed first lady a pension of some sort. For instance, James Polk's wife outlived him by 42 years. I didn't have that slide. The presidents who were retired for the shortest amounts of time. James Polk served one term. Excuse me. Polk was elected in 1844 with 4 campaign promises, and at the moment I've forgotten 3 of them, 2 of them. Doesn't matter. One of them was to bring Texas into the Union, and one of them was to serve only one term after he'd accomplished the other 3 goals. And so he didn't run for re-election because he'd accomplished the other 3 goals. And he retired from the presidency in 1849. 1849. I can sometimes stumble on the date. I got to make sure I got it right. March of 1849. And he and his wife took a tour of the southern states and got home, and he died in June of that year. He was retired president for 3 months. Sarah Polk lived to 1891, so she was the longest widowed first lady. Yeah.
I think it was gold standard in that Oregon border.
Thank you. The gold standard and the border with England up in Oregon. I think you're right. Yes?
How many presidents served in the military as opposed to how many didn't?
I had that slide, I think,
Yeah,
right?
you had it on
I
there.
missed that slide, I'm sorry.
69% of them served in the military. 69% of 43 is, what does that work out to, 29, 30? 29 or 30 of them served in the military. Now, some of the military service was National Guard, like... No. James Madison was a very sickly fellow. He was in the state militia for 3 months until they kicked him out.
But Lincoln wasn't that long either.
Lincoln served in the National Guard for also 3 or 4 months, but it was actually during a time of war, but he didn't see any action. So, yeah, more of them served in the military in one capacity or another. At the other end, of course, there was, well, General Eisenhower, General Taylor, General Grant. You know, some of them served a very long time.
Washington.
Yeah. Okay, I saw you, and then the back.
Prior to FDR, no president had been elected to a 3rd term in office, but were there any tried?
Prior to FDR, no president had been elected to a 3rd term. Did any try? Yes, several.
Yeah.
Roosevelt. Hey.
Yes, his cousin, Theodore, but he was only elected to 1 term.
Right.
Because the first term he succeeded. Grant was one of the first. Grant was elected in 1868 and 1872, and he made it come back in 1880, tried to get reelected, and he came pretty close to the convention, but he didn't quite get the nomination. Theodore Roosevelt got elected in 1904 after succeeding in 1901, and one of his campaign promises was, I'm not going to run for another term, and he didn't. He picked his Secretary of War, William Taft, and said, you're going to be the next president. And Taft said, I don't want to be president, I want to be on the Supreme Court. And Teddy said, no, you're going to be president. And Helen Taft said, you're going to be president. And Taft won the election of 1908. And Teddy went off to Africa and had a safari and had a grand old time rampaging around the planet. And he came home and he said, what the hell are you doing, Bill? That's not at all what I wanted you to be as president. I'm coming back. I'm going to take the job from you. Taft said, well, I didn't want to be president, but I'm president. I want to keep the job. And Taft got the nomination at the convention because the Republicans said, geez, do we really want Teddy again? He's just going to take over everything and make a mess of it. So, did Taft get stuck in a bathtub? Yes. Taft only had 1 term, is the whole point. Taft got the nomination. Teddy Roosevelt said, I'm Teddy Roosevelt. I don't need your nomination. I'm going to go form my own party. And he did. And the Democrats were loving this. Woodrow Wilson went from a nobody to the president. He won the election, and Teddy came in second in the election, making Taft a distant third,
But he got to be.
which wasn't nice. So Taft retired in 1913,